Hey everyone. Well, the markets continue to chug higher, setting new all-time highs in European bourses and the S&P 500, and the Nasdaq as well, multi-year highs for the Nasdaq. The Russell is of course catching up. That's a risk-on index, being that it's comprised of higher risk small-cap stocks, and it is a breath away from also hitting. Actually, is at all-time highs. That would be all-time highs for the Russell if it could keep moving like this. We've seen a appreciable number of names continue to come through that are actionable, which bodes well for the market internals. So this is a period. It's a rare period because we haven't really seen something like this in quite some time, where actionable names and follow through to fairly large percentage gains, like we saw in Tesla. We saw recently in GWPH, which has an interesting story. Some of the other biotechs are healing and potentially setting up. We've seen a number of these cup patterns in stocks like Amazon and other former leading stocks issue pocket pivots off constructive formations. So the market's in a very constructive phase right now, and we've been on board some of these names. And the market direction model has been, as I wrote earlier, it's taken into account additional material changes in QE. So its potential from here on is that it will start to behave like it has in prior market cycles. That is, it won't get shaken out too soon, or if it does get shaken out, it'll be very quick to get back on board. Because, as we know, this market can pull back just enough, like it did earlier this year, to put everyone in cash. But the difference this time is that the market direction model was quick to get back on board. Ahead of big picture IBD, for those of you who follow that, we have an algorithm and set of rules that I've been using. I created this thing more than 2 decades ago. So it was certainly inspired by Bill O'Neill's market timing methods that he talks about in his investment classic, How to Make Money in Stocks. But obviously, where the rubber meets the road is where all the hard work and intensive research goes, and it has to be statistically sound. So that it's always striving for statistical soundness, and sometimes statistical soundness goes out the window when you have material changes in the market, like we saw in 2009. And it was only because the model was quick to react to that material change that it was able to do very well in that earlier bull market cycle. 2012 was more, 2013, 2012 were probably the toughest years because they were just slightly worse. They weren't pronounced differences from before, but they were just enough to create problems for trend-following wizards and market timers across the land. It was very difficult time, but these difficulties, these challenges, is how we grow as traders. It helps us evolve our trading psychology, so we don't throw in the towel too soon, but keep on with our focus. And I think periods like this are great training grounds, improving grounds for call it evolutionary advancement as traders. And also we talk about, of course, this in our books, and we talked about it in FAQs, and that is really a key, is how a person reacts when things get really tough. And no doubt the market has been unprecedentedly tough 2012 to 2013. And I speak not just for myself, but in terms of position trading and market timing, but also in terms of all the tried and true 20-plus year career guys out there who have exemplary track records, who've been interviewed in books like Jack Schwager's Market Wizards, who unfortunately have just completely dropped the ball since 2009. I mean, if you look at their aggregate returns, they've been really trounced by the market averages. And it's not hard to see why. I mean, in 2013, the S&P was up just about 30% in 1 year. I mean, that's unbelievable, especially for S&P. But it speaks to the nature of the market we're in, which is QE manipulation, which causes bond yields to fall even further, and money just keeps flowing into the stock market. And that makes the corrections very limited in scope. S&P generally is corrected only to 6% or less, and then gets right back up and goes. And right now we're in a go period, so the market direction model remains on its buy, UVXY remains on its sell, and it'll be interesting to see if this accelerates, because at some point with all this money printing we could see a jump in inflation rates. We can see that would of course cause a jump in commodity prices. Hard assets do very well during inflationary periods, and of course certain stocks do as well, so that does bode well ultimately for the markets. We'll just continue to keep an eye on price volume action and see where it leads us. Gil?
Yeah, I think in this environment the deadliest weapon that you have has been the bottom fishing pocket pivots and the so-called roundabout pocket pivots. I was just going over where I've been successful this year. Last year was my best year since 2004 rather, and I was up mid double digits. My attorney cringes whenever I start talking about performance numbers, so he says to use vague references, which I'm going to do. So let's say last year I was up mid double digits, very nice. Should have been up triple digits, I thought. And then this year, we're not even halfway through the year, and I'm past the performance levels I had last year. And a lot of that is due to the shorting at the beginning of March, which is a perfect time to be short, as well as a number of the moves we've seen in stocks like Workday, FireEye earlier in the year, Data earlier in the year, even the rallies in Facebook. But my entry points in almost every single stock have been bottom fishing pocket pivots or roundabout pocket pivots. And so I'm buying stocks when your favorite newspaper is over there telling you that, this stock and that stock still need to build a base. And now they can tell you to buy Netflix, for example, on what's now a kind of an obvious, you got this gap up move, kind of an obvious cup with handle breakout. So my guess is going to come back into the 10-day or something. But here is a bottom fishing pocket pivot. It's one of the first ones that got the market turned. And I have to admit I was remiss in looking at that as something to buy, because what we were looking at the time, if you go back, Netflix at this point, this looks like a beautiful head and shoulders top. You're under the 200-day moving average or the 40-week line here. And this thing looks like, it's going to break. It's beautiful. It's got every element you would want. The only problem is it turns around and goes higher. And so, a lot of people will email me with head and shoulders patterns that they see, and I like to say that a little knowledge is always a dangerous thing, because you show them a head and shoulders formation, and everything is a head and shoulders formation, and they see them everywhere, in the closet, behind trees when they're out walking and stuff. They're just everywhere all of a sudden. In any case, you're buying them in here, and we've seen a few others. I think the Yelp was a good one. Here you had a bottom fishing pocket pivot. Notice how it takes some time, and the Bible gap up really tells you you're on the move now. And this is moving higher. You can see one of the first ones that we did catch pretty well was Illumina right here, and it's moved higher. Stock's building a handle now. That's normal. And it probably needs a little time. People email me, what do you think of Illumina? Well, there's not much to think other than the fact that it's building a handle. What you would be watching for, if you apply a little bit of common sense here, is that if you're up here forming a handle, what's going to be your next buy point outside of a obvious base breakout? And of course, that's going to be a pocket pivot off the 10-day moving average. So that's what you would be watching for. Someone says, does the BFPP work in all markets? If you go back and look at anything, it works quite well, I think, in all markets. And the pocket pivot itself is designed to give you an entry point within the base. But what we find is that the entry point can be lower in the base. So, IBD will be whining about a low base, or the stock's too low in its base. But, Netflix was too low in its base down here, and it's gone bonkers. Amazon, you get a pullback today. I don't know what the big deal is about their phone, the Fire phone. Dr. K, do you have any thoughts on the phone? Do you see that as being significant for the company, or is it just another hypey product that's not going to really produce big profits for Amazon? I think.
Yeah, Amazon's a really big company, and I just we'll see it if it's a really big deal, we'll start to really see an acceleration in its price formation. It's pretty much had the same rhythm. If you look at a weekly going back a number of years, it has that same rate of ascent when it is in an uptrend, which is sloppy. It tends to break through and violate its 50-day moving average routinely. because it's a big company. It's a $150 billion company. And, it's like Google. These companies, when they get big, it's like any of these companies, even Microsoft and IBM, they had their fast days, and then once they reached an equilibrium of size, of market cap relative to their industry, their rate of ascent slowed appreciably. And we're seeing that in Amazon for a number of years now. I don't expect this product to increase its rate of ascent markedly at all. I expect it to continue to have the same kind of rhythm.
Interestingly, if you look at a weekly chart on Amazon, the pocket pivot is occurring below a neckline on a head and shoulders formation. That's basically a horizontal neckline, a flat neckline, and you're coming up into this area of resistance at 340. It'll be interesting to see if the stock is able to come through there. But right now, I would say, let's say if the market rally suddenly gave way, this might be something I'd look at on the short side. But I have to admit there hasn't been much that works on the short side, but that's fine because what that has given me, for example, I tried shorting the CRM right around the 50-day. First it didn't hold, it moved higher, it gets stopped out, it runs up to the 65-day exponential. Short that here, get some love on it the next day. This was on Monday. And then the stock finds support at the 10-day moving average and turns higher for a pocket pivot actually here. And this thing is, up and it's out of here, and it looked like as well, you got a left shoulder and then here's your head and a right shoulder, and it's got all the components that you would be looking for in terms of the head and shoulder formation, but it doesn't pan out. And a lot of that, of course, is due to the general market. So one of the things that always helps me when I'm short is that I'll see suddenly, Netflix is one of the first ones, I'll see these head and shoulders just start to flip the other way, and you're getting pocket pivots coming up through the 50 or the 200-day moving average. And at that point, you're getting some idea that the short game is a little bit long in the tooth, and you're probably better off looking at some of these as buy points. So one of my favorites this week has been Tesla. I mean, this thing was revving up, and for those of you who use my HGS Investor software chart view, it was going code blue right here as it was flatlining right along the 50-day moving average. And I thought what was interesting about them announcing that they were going to make their patents available to anybody who wanted to use them, it sounds politically correct and typical left-wing liberal type self-sacrificing, what's the word I'm thinking of, martyr type stuff, In reality, it's kind of shrewd because I think what it does is this enables them to work with other car makers, and in fact they did meet with BMW and Nissan, which are two other. Nissan's the biggest manufacturer of electric cars, and BMW is just coming on with their new i8 and the i3, which are very interesting. But I think the key here is to develop standards that help grow the industry. So better to be a small player in a big pool rather than a small player in a small pool, I think, because there's a lot more growth. And so I think they're helping to establish the industry. And so we get back to this analogy to General Motors in the, what was that, Dr. Hill, 1914, I guess. What they did in terms of changing the industry, making the V8 engine and power, luxury, bringing that to the consumer in a relatively economical way, affordable way, then they pretty much changed the industry from these clunker Model Ts that barely moved to things that could provide people with some sense of speed. And so I think Tesla is similar in the way that what they're doing is broadening the electric car industry and really getting it revved up for growth. That's probably a bad pun there, but revved up for growth over the longer term, and they're going to be at the forefront of that. So in any case, I think that the giving away the patents works to that end, and I think you're seeing it in the stock. And this is a nice base. I mean, you look at this, pull back to the top of the other base, held the 40-week line, the 200-day moving average. Very tight in here. That was the other thing you could see on the weekly chart, is that you're going 3 weeks tight right here. So you could see it was coming. And we were talking a lot about this in the chat room. So that's working. If we look at Facebook, to me, this is a little bit slower. A pocket pivot here. It's still viable on the basis of this pocket pivot last week. You're holding the 10-day moving average. If it comes down, my way of buying the stock is it comes to the 10-day line, you buy it, and then you sell when it goes up, and then you buy when it comes back to the 10-day. I think at some point it is going to get to 70, and I can see that happening in the next few weeks. Maybe as we approach earnings, going into, what is this? When did Facebook announce earnings? At the end of July? Is that right?
Well, it says July 24th.
Yeah, so end of
That
July.
might be off.
Let's see. I'm going to run through some of the names I like. This GW Pharmaceuticals. You know, I think we should have been on this sooner, Dr. Hill. Did we mention this? We did actually on the Bible Gap up here.
Right at the open.
Yeah, right there. So we put that one out. It stalled a little bit, but that was Bible there. And then you get another one. You know, this thing is breaking out now, and I think this thing goes a lot higher. I think it has potential to be a big stock biotech. They're making cannabidiol, I think is how you pronounce it. It looks like, I want to pronounce it cannabidiol, but it's cannabidiol, which is CBD. And that's the component that they're making drugs from, and they've been proven to work for people who have multiple sclerosis and other illnesses, cancers and whatnot that cause spasms. And so it's very effective, and I think there is a huge potential based on the available evidence now and the studies that have already been done of applications for cannabis-related drugs, as opposed to, you know, just pot retailers, which everybody seems to get excited about the latest $7 or 7-cent stock. You know, here's Medical Marijuana Inc. You know, you get some moves like this because a bunch of morons come in and buy it because they think they're a big man or a big investor because they can buy 20,000 shares for $5 or something like that. But to me, these types of businesses, low margin, high regulatory and high security costs, and it's a retail business. I mean, you know, I went to college. Pot's a commodity. Okay, you buy it from just about anybody. I remember when I was in college, you could go down to Memorial Church at Stanford, and the guy who was the church caretaker was like the campus pot dealer, and he was selling it out of one of the towers in the church. It's pretty funny. And all the while he's in the church. Memorial Church is, you know, sacred area, I guess. And maybe that's where the pot belongs. But, you know, it's just a commodity. And so if you're selling pot, you know, good luck. But I think if you're using the components of marijuana, cannabis, cannabidiol, I think it's correct. Somebody want to give me that that pronunciation? Dr. K, do you know what it is? Is it cannabidiol or cannabidiol?
I've always heard cannabidiol, always. But again, who knows? I mean, you know, like out here, maybe they pronounce it, you know, tomato.
Yeah, maybe so. Who knows? In any case, I think pharmaceutical companies that are using these compounds to make drugs, because we know they work. We know that marijuana can be used to alleviate nausea for cancer patients going through chemotherapy and a number of other things, from pain and even type 2 diabetes. And so I think, you know, these guys are looking at fast-track FDA approval for their Sativex. So I think there's something here that has some long-term implications, and I like the technical pattern on GW. It's not MJNA. That's one of the junk stocks, and so I think it has potential to go higher. So it's already trading more volume. It looks like then it's going to trade the other day on the gap up. It's on pace to, because we're only a little over a couple hours into the trading day. Somebody comments, I'm trading from Denver this week. Good point about retail proliferation. Weed stores everywhere. Yeah, so, you know, it's too simplistic to think, oh, a pot store is going to be big business. No. Anyways, some other names, you know, Palo Alto Network's hanging up here just fine. Interestingly enough, you can see the ants at the top of the pattern. You notice it's come up to the left side of the base, so it's kind of hanging out, you know, base building a little bit up here. As it works some of this overhead, you got all these ants setting up, and it just keeps wanting to go higher. A little pullback yesterday towards the 10-day, no volume. I think it's going higher. I own the stock, and I'm just sitting with it right now. I think Barron is interesting as a cousin stock to PANW. I don't think they're in exactly the same business. They're in the same group, though. This thing had a nice viable gap up, and then they announced a secondary offering here, which knocked the stock down. The offering's been completed, I believe, or closed, so they're going to price it. And then I think the stock may come out here. Kind of watching... Notice how you come up here, there's resistance at the bottom of the falling window, the gap here, the low part of it here. And so it's backing up a little bit. It looks okay to me. It looks like, you you'd want to. I bought a little bit on this pullback here, but I also bought some in here earlier in the week. So I think it's just setting up. So it's just a matter of time. Yelp, of course. We were in the chat room a few days ago on Monday. It's right there. You get the Bible gap. It pulls right to the Bible gap up intraday low, and then that's where you buy it. I get someone asking me today, is it a good buy today? I'm not sure what that question means. Does that mean I know that it's going up from here? I don't know. You had to buy it here. That was the place to buy it. It's extended now. I think Twitter is acting pretty well. I think it needs a pullback down into the 50-day moving average. You did have something of a, I don't know, my volume bar is missing here, but this was actually just enough for a little pocket pivot. It's kind of wedging higher. I think it's going to back and fill a little bit. You got some resistance coming in here from the left side of the pattern and the 65-day exponential. But that's been a good trade off around roughly the 33 or 35 level, I think, the other day. SunPower pulling back. It needs to pull back. It's way up there. So my objective in the chat room, I was talking about, when it was down in here, I thought it was ready to go, and you had a number of entry points that we picked off. And hopefully you were buying it in here, and then you get this nice big move. I figured it'd get to 40. That seemed about right based on other breakouts it's had, and sure enough, it's coming up now. Now what I think you're going to see is I'd like to see the 10-day meet up with the stock somewhere around 38, and that would provide a secondary buy point. So that, this one's acting well. The whole solar group is acting well. You can throw in First Solar had a pocket pivot right there. We reported on that. It's continued higher, but you have a lot of congestion from the left side of the pattern, so I don't expect this to just launch out of here. You're going to have to be opportunistic looking for a pullback closer to the 50-day moving average. Solar City, we had no interest in this until you got this buy point right here, and you had to catch this early in the day. Bottom fishing pocket pivot, you got, I think the number I saw was about 29% of the float is short. And once they got this thing going, you had a little pullback here to come after it, and it's moving higher. But again, this is probably going to have to pull back and do some backing and filling. The only place I think to buy it, you might have gotten lucky picking off some here, or you might have been able to catch it close to the 200-day. I'm not sure when we came out with that alert, but it worked pretty well. That thing's just on a tear, mostly because of the short sellers, I think. We'll see where it goes from here. Glog is continuing higher. We've got that one out right here on the pocket pivot, so that's breaking out now. But it's coming straight up off the lows of the base, so it might be entitled to a pullback. You got Kate Spade on a pocket pivot here, and that leads to a breakout. No volume on the breakout, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it test the 10-day moving average. That's why I'd be looking at it on a pullback. Horizon Pharmaceuticals. This stock, pocket pivot here, pulls back. Pocket pivot here, pulls back. Pocket pivot here, look for it coming into the 10-day moving average. That would be an entry point, I think. In most cases, you've got to buy these stocks on weakness, and come after them when they're pulling in or in orderly fashion. If you look at, say, Kate, for example, I was talking about this last week, you get, this is actually wedging. You have low volume down here, and you're wedging up along the lows, trying to break out here, which is, it's just wedging within the handle. So this pullback to the 50-day moving average serves to correct that, I think, and then sets up the pocket pivot. Now, with it coming out here, you're not getting any volume, so I think it's going to come back and test the 10-day moving average. That's what I'd be watching for. The oils continue to act well. You have Continental Resources, continuation pocket pivot yesterday. Sanchez Energy is extended, but watch for pullbacks into the 10-day line. I think most of these oil stocks are in position to pull back, so I might expect some of that. You've got some of the other ones. I mean, they're all over the place. Bonanza Creek Energy, I even saw EOG was moving higher. Even this one, Matador Industries, moving higher. There was this other one that people have liked in the chat room is moving higher. I mean, they're all moving higher, but I think they're in a position now where they might have a little bit of a pullback here. So we'll see how that plays out. Fang is another one. It's just continued higher. But now it's starting to pull back. That's normal. Watch it coming into the 10-day probably. You got ants up here. That means the stock's been up 12 out of 15 days in a row or better. So looking okay. Someone's asking about Intercept Pharmaceuticals. I don't. Yeah, it's trying to round out. Maybe it comes out of this base. Hard to say what this is. It's too quick on the first low to be a double bottom. I don't know. What's your take on this, Dr. K? You've traded this one before, haven't you?
Yeah, I liked it, of course, when it was ripe and ready to rip. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I continue to track this one because of what it's done before, price-wise, and I think it's setting up. I mean, it had a pocket pivot of sorts on the 9th. It's very volatile. The thing is, well, actually, no, it did not have a pocket pivot. One, two.
Well,
yeah, it did have a pocket pivot on the 9th, but it's very volatile. If you look at the weekly, it tells a very choppy, rough tale of the price, and so it seemed a little bit premature to go ahead and just buy a full position or any position. Now it's rounding out very constructively, so I've got my eye on this one. I expect it to issue some sort of pocket pivot in this kind of market environment at some point in the near future.
Right. Well, you have one here, so you could say then, couldn't you say then that this is viable on the basis of this pocket pivot using, the 10-day line?
Yeah, absolutely.
As a seller.
Sure, that would be fine because it has been constructive. So you could do a starter position here and then double up when we get another pocket pivot.
Yeah, it's a squirrely stock though, so be prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, it can have 50-point moves in a day. I mean, what's this change here was how many points is that? High 251, low of 222. Yeah, that sounds like my kind of stock. Let's see. Green Mountain Coffee has been acting well. I think the trick here is buying it on weakness. You had a breakout here, and then you pull back to the 10-day, and you actually have one pocket pivot, two pocket pivots, and a third pocket pivot off the 10-day line. So it might be viable here using the 10-day line at 120 and change as your stop. It's an obvious cup with handle breakout. It's a stock that has had a decent run so far. It could be considered late stage, but they're buying it. I think the trick here is that Coca-Cola is been taking an interest in the company, and so there's some talk of them either being bought out or buying more of the stock or whatnot. Let's see. JD coming down below the 10-day. So this thing's, I think, finally forming its first real base, so we'll see how this thing sets up. It's pulling back right now. People taking profits, which I really don't blame them when it's up that much. LinkedIn is another one of these bottom fishing pocket pivots. There's one right there. We were talking about this last week in the chat room, and I know some of the guys there bought it, and it's moved higher. You're running into some resistance up here. You can see how you backed up earlier in the week, and so it's trying to turn, but it's not really my favorite. I think Twitter is a little strong here, but we'll see how this pans out. I think it needs a little pullback here and some time to work off some of this overhead, but we'll see how, if it's able to power through this very quickly, that's probably a good sign. But my guess is everybody who's going to sell the stock pretty much has. So let's see, VIPs, if you were in the chat room earlier this week, we were talking about it right at the 10-day. It was right there that day, and they talked about buying it right there, and the stock popped off there. That was around, I think it was around 177 we were talking about it, and we were getting a 620 buy signal on the stock back then. Let me take a look at this real quick. Here we go. Let's go to VIPs. We'll go back to, what was Monday? What was the date on Monday, Dr. A? 16th? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, early in the day, see, we saw this around 176, 177. It had the buy signal here. You had one here before the opening. Opening is 6:30 my time. That's what my chart's showing. And here's your 620 buy signal. I use a 620 chart if stocks are coming into areas of potential support on a pullback. I'm looking for the turn off of there. So this, right there at the 10-day, it's coming in, and I'm using this to figure out when I want to move into the stock. And that's helpful on pullbacks. You can see this. Let's look at Facebook today. Let's go. We got to go to today. Stock's trying to get up, but you can watch this. Whoop, that's not it. Right here. Here we go. It's trying to turn here. So, and I bet you it does. So I'd be watching for a 620 buy signal on the pullback to the 10-day moving average. See that? That's how I use it. I know the other day someone was talking about shorting SunPower at 38.60 or something like that. But that's, you don't use it to try and short something that's trending up. You use it to pick off things on a counter trend, on a short-term counter trend. So in other words, a pullback for a stock that's in an uptrend, and then you're using it as a guide to buy the stock on the pullback when it's able to make the turn. Okay. I know people, again, I get nervous showing this chart. We get questions about it from people that they hear about it on the chat room. But again, sometimes a little knowledge is a dangerous thing if you're not using any common sense. So, anyways. I'm not seeing many questions today, interestingly enough. I guess everybody's like pretty much fat and happy right now. They've bought some positions over the last few weeks, and they're up pretty nicely on most of these, I would hope. Let's see, some other ones. Someone, I know Zebra has been a popular name in the chat room. Here's a pocket pivot right there. It looks like it's breaking down. It comes right down on top of this little area here at 75 and then turns. So that's an interesting story. Dr. You know anything about this one? Or not really on your radar?
Not in depth. That their printers, that's an interesting printing company of sorts, but I don't know the nuts and bolts behind the drive. I mean, the chart looks pretty good. I don't like the spin out it had in April. But it's in a great industry group because printing is the hot topic in all its forms, in all its unique forms rather. And the earnings and sales on this thing are rocketing. Well, they've accelerated very nicely last quarter. So, I mean, all around it looks like a good stock. It's done good things in the pattern in terms of gapping up twice, and it is a playable stock.
Yeah, I mean, it looks okay. It's kind of a little bit small, $720,000 on a $79. That's not too bad. I like them thicker, though. Can someone send an IM through the system? I want to make sure that that's working. Okay, there we go. CAVM approaching downside target. Yeah, I think, there's no volume on this thing today. It's actually trading very light volume. I've been watching it all morning. I'm looking at wanting to buy it back because I sold into this move because you're moving into new highs on light volume. Bought it down in here on the viable gap up, and now it's run up a little bit. And so I'd like to buy it back, but I think it can come all the way down into the 50 area or the 20-day moving average. But the volume is light today, so let's take a look at it on the on the 620 chart. You can see it's setting up here. So you'd watch for a move back up through it. Tried to do it this morning, but no such luck. Usually when it's real quick right off the opening, it doesn't pan out. They need some time to settle out. But it looks like it, maybe trying to turn. You're starting to get a turn here, and this is holding up in the MACD lines here on the crossover. So maybe it's getting ready to turn. We'll see. Somebody's asking about gold. I'm not really interested in gold right now, but that's a nice gap up. You would call it, isn't that a pocket pivot gap up, Dr. K? So, but the Fed said they're going to print. They're all the money that's fit to print, they're going for it. So I would think gold at some point would have to rally, don't you think, Dr. K? Do you like it here? Would you be buying this?
I'm not buying it here, but I mean, if you're a long-term holder and your fundamental play on gold, there's nothing wrong with buying it here. It is a pocket pivot, and it's through moving it through the 50 and the 200-day. Technically, it looks good. And the idea, though, is it's still in the middle of a basing pattern, so it's probably going to go up back and forth and fill. And so, you could easily get whipped out of your position if you're going to be technically trying to trade this thing. But on a fundamental basis, I don't think there's anything wrong with buying it right now with the intention that it will go higher and eventually clear the old highs at around, 1850.
Yeah. Here I'm looking at Yelp now. It already had the MACD cross here pretty nicely, and it's starting to move back to the upside. I bet you get some sort of a buy signal in here soon. So and I think Facebook's probably doing the same thing. I see today's pullback as normal. Look, to me, it looks pretty well contained. What's the volume looking like right now, Dr. K? Are we punching some pretty heavy volume, or is it pretty mellow? I think it's a little higher on the NASDAQ.
Pretty, it's under average right now. Just a touch under average.
Let me check.
If you're looking at, yeah.
Well, you're 11% higher on the NASDAQ right now. You're 3.5% lower. I don't really see it as an issue. Your indexes are down. You know, the NASDAQ's down 0.22, so less than 1/4%. The Dow's down 0.15, and the S&P's down 0.07%. That's almost nothing. So, you know, to me, that looks pretty good. Someone's
The
asking
market
about.
looks totally constructive. I mean, it's pulling back, and it's just doing what it should do so far.
Yeah. This is Anika Therapeutics is what I call a POS, so I'm not going to elaborate on that, but you probably know what that means. Thing tries to break out and it fails, and I don't know. It's trying to hold the 58. I'm not a big fan of it. If it's not going to get going, it's just going to jerk you around. Forget it. There's other stuff I can buy. You know, stuff that's moving. So why
Especially
bother?
in this kind of market where you have a lot of good names moving, and then you have to be very discriminating and don't let your losses get out of hand, especially in something like this that should be moving with the market, because lots of names are. So
Right.
you can afford to be very selective in this kind of environment. And I remember in any good market, you know, it could be the 90s, it could be late 2006, where lots of names are coming through. I would my turnover rate was very high because I didn't have any patience for a stock that wasn't moving. And if it wasn't moving, I'd pitch it or maybe sell half of it and use that capital to buy something that looked like it was going to move.
Yeah, go where the love is. That's what I say. So. Someone points out gold is forming a reverse head and shoulders. Here, I mean, here's a formation, but you don't really need to operate on that. I think if you're seeing this, and that would qualify as a pocket pivot, so it's giving you a buy signal here, and that may indicate that you want to buy it here. You got the 200-day line here at 124.32, and the GLD you have the 50-day at 123.74. So if you want to take a shot on this. I think that that's doable using those two lines as your selling guide. So, add a couple of percent there, to taste. Some of that's are the 3D stocks trying to round about. They are a little bit. I've been watching them. I noticed, this thing is way down there. Kramer told us not to buy these things right here on this day. I remember I had the TV on that day just to listen to his words of wisdom and find things to fade. But X1 is trying to turn here. Another, similar, really down and dirty. X1 actually has a pocket pivot here through the 50-day. But this stuff is deep doo-doo type stuff. So, I don't know if it's going to you get into some heavy petting with you and give you plenty of love because it's still pretty down there. Stratasys might be in a little better position. It's only, how many percent is that off the peak there, Dr. K? 40%? No, what is that?
Yeah,
No,
about 30%.
26% off its peak. So, that correction is a little more well contained. You did get a, let's see, pocket pivot here, but that's through the 65-day exponential. It's pulling back into it. Maybe that's going to turn. But, this is kind of, in this position, and I think it needs more time to round out. And most of these probably do. But, one thing I'm afraid of is that we show this bottom fishing thing. Everyone wants to start bottom fishing with everything, And, again, the old adage that little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So, some things I think they need to round out. I think you can also think through, whether they're big stocks and whether they have potential. Like, for example, thinking through the Yelp thing, if Priceline was willing to pay $103 for Open Table, I think Open Table was trading around $70 at the time that they announced that buyout, it does sort of give us a reference point for what Yelp's business is worth to someone else who might want to buy them, and possibly the longer term value of the company and what it does. So they are pretty much one of the, would you call them the premier online review and search type of site, Dr. K?
Well, I mean, yeah, they've been around doing what they do very well, but there's many competing sites. So, when you want to when I need to get that kind of information, I don't go to Yelp. I just go to Google, and then whatever sites appear, and then I go to those sites for the information.
Right.
I mean, there's so much reviewer information out there now.
That's true.
It's staggering.
Someone's asking about Celgene. You have a gap up today on Celgene. You have these pocket pivots down here, one at the 50-day here, and then another one at the 200-day, and it flipped back in, and then another one at the 200-day, and it's moved higher, and now you got another one. So, you know, if you had to be on this there, if you're buying it now, I don't know if that's a viable gap up. Yeah, but it's trying to come out of this pattern.
It's more of a pocket pivot, really.
But yeah, again, I think you're reacting to things. You know, people don't seem to get excited about stocks until they see them up, and then they want to know if it's a good buy up here, or is it too late to buy? Which I think if you're asking that question, if you have to look at a stock and ask the question, and you have to ask the question, is it too late to buy? It's probably too late to buy. You should have been on the stock a lot earlier, and you're getting clear signals everywhere as far as buying stocks in good positions early as they're rounding out the lows of bases, or even, you know, something like Kate Spade. This is a pocket pivot here, it backs and fills. You know, you can be in on the pullback. I already talked about this earlier in the webinar, and someone's asking me to review it. So obviously, you either weren't around or you were not paying attention. In any case, this was you have light volume throughout the handle, and as it's moving up, this breakout attempt fails because it's wedging. So you correct the wedge by pulling to the 50-day moving average, and then you get a pocket pivot. There's no real volume here, so I think it moves up more on the market and a lack of sellers. And now you're coming back in because you got some overhead in here, and probably I'd look at the 10-day as a buying point. Skyworks, not really much to think about here. Has it had a pocket pivot here? You're looking for a continuation pocket pivot off the 10-day moving average. That's the only thing you can look at. Otherwise, it's acting fine. ACT is another example of a stock that you have to buy on weakness, pulls back into the 50-day moving average, and then it comes out. It's a big name. You know, a lot of institutions like it, so I think it does get support on the pullbacks. You're going to see that, and I think that looks fine. Apple's kind of interesting. I think though what was that split? 7 for 1, Dr. K?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so some people were talking about MasterCard, I guess, split like that, and the stock went down. I remember Baidu went 10 for 1, and the stock took off. So I don't think you can jump any conclusions about what a stock is going to do. I do think that stock's up there, and now maybe it's had a nice run off the lows here, you know, from here up, even off the lows here, and not quite a double off the lows here in last June. And maybe this is where all the dumb retail money comes in, and the institutions say, "Thank you very much, take my stock." Maybe that's, you know, maybe Carl Icahn will sell it now. He's got to be doing it well in that position. Baidu's another big stock Nasdaq name. You can see this is just a cup here, and so now it's trying to pull back and form a handle. You had some pocket pivots here. I think you had one. Was it here? Yeah. Did that qualify? Not really, but it's moving up the right side with everything else, so it's looking okay. Priceline, another big stock, just kind of building a cup with handle. They got hit when they announced the buyout of Open Table. Watching Amazon here, trying to hang in there, but it's a little bit weak. I guess nobody likes the Fire Phone. It's not that exciting. You know, one that I talked about in the chat room when it was at 18 bucks right here a while ago, in Trexon, has had a nice move. I since sold it a little early, I'm sad to say, but it looks like you get a pocket pivot right here on this thing. This is a pretty strong story, but it's straight up off the low, so it's kind of extended. But it worked, you know, right here. You had to catch it right about in here. I think I caught it right around this day or something like that. Had a nice pop there. Sold into it. VRX is toast. I don't even think you want to bother with that. Alexion, you know, late stage situation here, doesn't seem to be holding up. So I went, for me, this is sitting at the 50-day. It needs to come off. You did get sort of a pocket pivot here yesterday, and it's not holding. So it looks to me like it's going to violate the 50-day, and maybe it's going to head lower. But, you know, I don't think these are really the names to be focusing on. You want to focus on some of the newer merchandise. I think Tesla, you know, coming out of its base looks more interesting. This GW Pharmaceuticals, Yelp looks more interesting, Palo Alto Networks, Cavium, etc. PCRX is acting okay. It had a continuation pocket. Last couple of days, actually, both were continuation pocket pivots right at the top of the base. So it's just coming out of here. So if you did buy this, you could use the 10-day moving average as your downside guide, or the top of the, say the 80 area as your stop if you want to keep it relatively tight. What else? Z comes up from time to time. Stock's moving higher. It's extremely volatile. They're talking about combining their business with Trulia, which is moving as well. But these are more examples of stocks that have been coming around and rounding out their bases. Trulia is kind of volatile, so it's a tough one to play. But, hanging in there okay. So I'm letting, let's see, Twitter and Spewer, which are SunPower, which are positions I was playing, I'm letting those pull back today. They're doing that, so I'm looking to re-enter. I think Yelp looks fine. A lot of shorts want to swarm Yelp because it's clearly overvalued, and there's articles now telling everyone you got to short it along with Netflix, and I think people are just going to get hosed on those if they try to short them. The trend is up right now, and I don't see that any stocks are really showing any severe breakdowns. There's a few, like Coors, for example. That is a late-stage failed base, and it is failing at the 50-day moving average. I've tried to short the stock, up in here. It looked to me like it was going to start to break, but I haven't been able to borrow it, so I'm not really going to bother with it. I'll just stick with my longs and be happy. And I'm doing very well anyway, so it's not like I need to start going short. Let's see. Any other questions? I'm looking around at some of my better names. GBX continuing higher. We've talked about that one. Gentherm, corrects hard and comes back up and turns back to the upside. Athlon is another oil company acting well. These things just keep going. You see the airlines trying to come back. Delta Airlines is trying to come back. Some of these have corrected, so they're pulling in. They look okay. Save, rather, is back at the top of its base and building a little handle here. That's what it looks like on a weekly chart. So it's had a long run, though. So they're trying to hang in there. I get questions about AFOP, which Alliance Fiber Optic, which I'm not really into. I think Finisar kind of tells you what's going on with the group. This was one of the better ones on earnings. They just got pummeled. So, this looks like a shortable gap down. Maybe it's heading lower. You could short it and use the high here at 20 as your stop. Looks pretty grim. I think Methanex is coming around. Chemical company, acting okay. Do you like Tata Motors, Dr. Cat? Noticing yesterday that had sort of a pocket pivot right here.
Well, I mean, I've never really been into this stock just because if you look at the weekly over the last few years, really since 2011, it's just been very sloppy and loose.
Yeah, but a little pocket pivot, I don't know. Intrex, no, Inter Zion Holding, I guess. You have the pocket pivot breakout here on nice volume, and it comes right back in. Support at the 50-day. So I guess you got to buy it on weakness. But I don't know. Is this thing setting up for a run? I don't know. To me, it seems feeble. So I don't bother. Las Vegas
the weekly
Sands
tells the story pretty well on that one. And again, it's not something that's real interesting.
Las Vegas Sands, I don't know, at the 200-day moving average, you're going to short it. Is it a short? It's a big head and shoulders, You got more or less a vertical or horizontal neckline on this one. Is it shortable here? I guess if you think it's going lower, you could try and short it, but I'm not really a fan of doing anything with it right here. Is Netflix a potential for a pod? Well, any stock that forms a big, deep cup is always a potential for a pod, but it's also potential for a breakout to all-time highs. So you don't know until you start seeing it break down. And maybe if you saw a big volume violation of the 10-day moving average, I would tell you that you're starting to break down. But, yeah, kind of like asking me whether, if the sun comes up, does the sky have the potential to be blue? Well, yeah, unless some clouds show up. Kihu, you have the pocket pivot yesterday. It's hanging along the 200-day moving average. You should get the support here. I notice this stock isn't marginable, and I don't really play with stocks that aren't marginable. If they have a 100% margin requirement overnight, that's fine because you can still trade them on an intraday basis and be out of them real quick if you need to. But I don't. It's something that isn't marginal like Kihu. I don't really play, but it looks like it's trying to turn. Remember you had this Bible gap up and that failed. It was probably too soon because you come way up off the lows of the base and you're kind of in a V-shaped pattern. Something like Yelp probably works better because it had some time after coming straight up in a V-shaped maneuver off the lows. It has some time to consolidate and set that up. So that looks better on a relative basis. So I'm not sure I'm a big fan of Kihu. So let's see, we're getting towards the end of the hour. You got any more questions on particular stocks? I mean, you have a pretty good idea, what I like here, and I've been doing pretty well. And so far I'm having a great year, knock wood. Don't want to screw that up. But, so far so good. I'm not going to complain. I'd like to do triple digits this year. So that would be the first time since 2004. I think I was up 168% in 2004. Mostly with Apple and Google at that time. So I don't know what does it this time. Tesla's going to be a comeback. Maybe it's GW Pharmaceuticals. Thoughts on Jazz? Well, again, is there a need to have thoughts? You just look at facts. You have a pocket pivot right here. Is it a potential to be a roundabout? Yeah, it's kind of a double bottom type cup here, and you have some resistance from the left side here. So maybe it's viable in the pullback. Will Harley's new electric motorcycle keep Hogg's trend intact? Maybe, I don't know, but it's very choppy and doesn't really seem, I don't really like the pattern, so I'm not sure. I don't think so. I mean, God, an electric motorcycle, doesn't that kind of defeat the whole purpose of having a Hog? That thing's got to be, when you fire those things up or when you hear one coming down the street, it's like, that growling, rumbling sound, and that's really, to me, what a Harley is all about. I don't see how you really sacrifice it. So I don't see Harley's customer base being thrilled by these. Maybe some PC dweeb from San Francisco would be into them. But I don't know. And the other thing is when you're riding a motorcycle, you want to have everything available that lets people know you are there. So being in a nice, quiet, right, Dr. K? You know that, right?
I was just going to say that this is not a very good idea. First of all, know your audience. Second of all, it's extremely dangerous if it dramatically cuts down on the decibels.
Yeah.
Actually, there are some quiet bikes here in London, and I've seen people step right out in front of them because they don't hear the public.
Weren't you hit by one in Ibiza?
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with this decibel level.
That guy just came out of nowhere.
Motorcycles in general are pretty dangerous, but obviously I love motorcycling myself, but with pads and dirt motorcycling, not street biking.
Yeah, exactly.
The odds are pretty bad when it comes to street biking. But around here, I think some of the new bikes are very quiet, and I see an increased incidence of this. So that makes it that much more dangerous for the biker, who car could back right out in front of them.
Right.
They could go for a spin.
Right. They're hard to see, and I've seen too many people killed around where I live. And they're actually driving right by, an accident that just occurred, and a pretty grim sight, I must say. So, all that's to say it's probably a dumb idea, and the pattern doesn't seem to confirm that's a great idea. Let's see, Cree viable after 50-day. Well, Cree's another bottom fishing type situation, whacking back to the 50-day. Might be. That's kind of where I look at it. I'm watching it here. We can look at the 620 chart on Cree. You see Facebook is priming to turn here. Let's see what Yelp is doing now. Yelp is still, just hovering around. They're going to turn. Watch. I think unless the market, if the indexes don't sell off, I think if they hold, you're going to see these things turn. Watching Variant too. I've already bought a little bit of it here on the basis of this turn here, but it's a little bit slow. Maybe they dumped 5 million shares into the market. Maybe that's going to slow things down a little bit. Someone says, tell Dr. K to come to Alabama and we ride some single track. Okay. Yeah, Dr. K
Sounds cool.
is a badass motocross rider. You guys, people don't know that about you, Dr. K.
Yeah, I guess it's genetic because I was always hooked on BMXing from the time I was a
Yeah.
little kid.
Williams Clayton Energy, here's a pocket pivot right here. A stock trades by appointment, though. Trades 69,000 shares a day. Not really something I'm interested in. It is $100 and something stock. You could always buy 1,000 shares, I guess. But it's a pocket pivot right here. So coming off the 10-day, which is under the 50-day. Now you're coming above the 50-day. So, you know, it's okay. Nothing thrilling. Let's see. Diodes. We put out a pocket pivot alert on diodes here, I believe, and the stock has moved up a little bit. You know, now it's pulling back to the top of the base. Maybe it becomes viable in there. BLCCF. Knightsbridge tankers, you know, broke out. You had a pocket pivot, I believe, here, and we picked that off, and it's run up and pulling back to the top of the base. So it might become viable on the pullback down into, say, the 20-day at 1472, somewhere around 50. I mean, it's within range here if you like it, but it's kind of a cheap stock to me. What's this other one someone's asking about? I see this. Who's bothering me on the telephone? Hold on a second. Turn that thing off. Anyways, let's see. It's 9:28. We're about going to wrap up here. ATEN, A10 Networks, cheap stock. You know, I don't really see anything here utterly thrilling. Here's a pocket pivot there. I guess you bought it there, but, you know, I don't really see anything there. It's also pretty thin. Trades what? 100, couple hundred, 369,000 shares, losing money. I have to look into this if there's some big story, but I don't really see anything. You know, maybe there's a pocket pivot here you can buy on the basis of that, but it's way extended, so not really happening for me. President about to speak on Iraq. You know, I think the whole Iraqi crisis is, you know, Iraqi crisis light. I don't really see how it escalates into something major. And of course, you know, if you watch the news on TV, you know, it's the end of the world, and the reporters like to dramatize it all that they possibly can. You know who's really good at that, Dr. K, is Liz Claiborne. Remember when I was in New York, we were in New York back in August 2010, and I went on with her. She's very dramatic. She loves that drama. Looks like GWPH is going to secondary offering, 1.7 million share. Yeah, that's kind of old news there. That was priced last night, this morning. So that got sucked up. But like I was saying earlier, to me, you know, somebody was, I was buying the stock yesterday on the pullback down to like 84. And someone's worried that, aren't you worried about the secondary? Aren't you going to let it price first? Like, no, not really. 1.7 million shares on this is just a spec, and so they vacuumed that up pretty well, I thought. So, you know, it's not a lot, and I've seen, I think the mutual funds owning the stock have gone from 19 funds at the end of December of last year to 63 funds. And I notice you see Fidelity in there. Their blue chip growth fund actually has taken a new position in there. You see some smart hedge funds in there. Take a look at this. You know, Kaufman's in there now. Janus is in there now. The Fidelity Blue Chip Growth Fund, Franklin Biotech, which is an A-plus fund, but a lot of the biotechs are high-rated funds because they've done well. And if you look at advisors, you know, Fidelity Management and Research has taken a 797,000 share position in this. So let's look at other hedge funds. There's a few that have taken some positions here. T. Rowe Price is in there. Wells Fargo is in there. Morgan Stanley is in there. Driehaus Capital Management, very smart firm. Wells Capital Management. What's that, Dr. K?
Richard Driehaus, one of the market wizards.
Yeah, he was also a
Interviewed by
client. He was a client of ours at O'Neill, so I talked to him a
Yeah.
couple. Very, very smart guy. Very arrogant though. But you can, I have to say, to be a trader, to be an investor, you have to be fairly self-confident, and you have to be able to exude a self-confidence that enables you to be decisive and make decisions when you have to. A timid personality, I don't know how well that works in the market. So a lot of these guys have been around the block a few hundred times. They tend to be arrogant because they've survived, and they have to be to do so, to be successful. Someone asked a question. We're going to answer a couple of quick questions before we sign off. What are your guys' thoughts on the solar roadways project? Sounds like it's going to shake up a lot of industry, but blah, 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 blah. Well, I don't have an opinion on it, so who knows? We already talked about JD. Somebody asked, what is your information source on the mutual and hedge funds? Well, you can just use MarketSmith shows you the number of hedge funds on there. I use Bloomberg and Wanda, so that's where I can get my data from. So,
It's interesting. With all the market averages are up for this year, but if you look at the Treehouse various funds like mid cap growth, global growth, micro cap growth, international, virtually, the ones that international discovery, they're all down single digits for the year. He has a couple funds that are up. But yeah, he's not blowing the doors off, and
no,
it seems like he's probably struggling just like all these other guys, all these other trend-following wizard types.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, he's very smart. The guy's really good at what he does. He's one of the best, but
But
again,
if you've got Fidelity in there and Wells Management and Kaufman, I mean, I know all these guys. They're smart funds, so I think that, and you combine that with the technical action, I think this thing's got some potential. So. Someone asked about ANET. It's a new IPO. You got to form a base. JD, same thing. It's forming the base. So there's nothing there. Radiant is someone's asking about that. That's moving pretty well. It's way up there though, but it's a $7 stock. So I don't know. Radnet. That's what it is. It's not Radiant. Kang. Starting to pull out the junk stocks. Kang is some new Chinese IPO. I don't know. It's way up there. Why am I going to buy it? Dr. K, you want to bless that for them? So, anyways, I'm looking. Hopefully give you some idea what I'm looking at on the pullbacks today. I think the market coming in a little bit. If you look at it, it's probably entitled to catch a little bit on the Nasdaq, a little bit of resistance from the left side as it pulls out to new. What would it be? This would be 14-year high, right, Dr. K?
I believe so. Yeah, that's about right. Last I looked, something like that, give or take a year.
So it's looking, to me looks normal. I mean, everything looks normal. You got a breakout yesterday on heavier volume. What's not to like, really? So just keep a steady hand. Sell into strength, like I sold into SunPower running up, but I'm looking to buy it back. It's pulling in nicely. Watching my 620 charts here. To see where I might want to come in. Let's look at SunPower real quick. You can see it's trying to make a low in here. It might turn. So, I think these stocks, there's a lot of power on these breakouts, and it seems to be telling me they want to go higher. So I'd definitely be using pullbacks to try and get in here somewhere. Ideally, I'd like to see the 10-day catch up. And this is really my favorite. I know there's the other ones that are acting okay. TSL, they're trying to come up, but these are doggy, and these are the Chinese ones. So I'm not really. JDK, that's what is that? No, JKS. What am I thinking? No, it's China, but these are doggies. So I think you want to go with SunPower. That's the leader. Anyways, that's all we've got, you guys. So someone's asking what's going on with the metals. Well, we've talked about gold already. Gold's got the pocket pivot gap move. Same thing with silver. So as I pointed out earlier, people must be showing up late to these. You're going to have to watch the recording, I think. But as I pointed out earlier on the GLD, you're pushing up to the 200-day and the 50-day, so you can use those as your selling guides if you want to buy into this. So, but it looks fine to me. Anyways, that's all we've got, you guys. You're in a nice bull market so far. We don't have anything nasty happening yet. Doesn't mean you can't have a decent pullback here at any point in time. But I would be opportunistic. And now that things are starting to heat up a bit, if you didn't buy earlier and you're trying to play catch up, first of all, we probably have to slap you around for that because there's been plenty of things to be buying, and it's not like you have to go hog wild on them. Just take some positions on the roundabout pocket pivots that we've been picking off left and right, and I think you should be doing okay. So that's really the story right now. I don't see anything yet to derail the train, so you just keep an eye on things and watch your stocks, and that's really what it boils down to. Anything to add, Dr. K, before you sign off?
Yeah, just stay the course.
All right. Thanks for showing up, everybody. We'll catch you soon. Don't forget to check me out. Well, I don't like the way that sounds. Don't forget to meet up with me in the chat room every morning. We put out what my hours will be in the chat room. Dr. K doesn't show up because he's above it all, and so he leaves it to the he leaves it to the lowly men.
At least we have an understanding.
to do the work. No, I've assigned Dr. K a number of very sophisticated research projects for the new book, and I don't want him distracted from that. So you stay in your lab, Dr. K, and I'll handle the PR work. Anyways, hope to see you guys.
I'll stay in my ivory tower and look down on D.
Yeah, so I'm even thinking I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to regret this probably, but I'm even thinking of throwing an LA-based sort of a meetup dinner somewhere on the west side of LA sometime in the summer, maybe in August, where VOSI members who are in town can come in and have dinner. You're going to have to pay for it, though, because I'm not buying everybody dinner. But, you know, we do dinner, everyone can talk and meet other traders. I always enjoy hanging out with other traders. You learn a lot from other people. I think, and then I'll make a presentation on the market. Maybe we'll have a guest presenter or something. I don't know. But I'm kind of tossing that around, so keep an eye out for that. Anyways, that's all we got, you guys. Good luck today, and good luck in the market till we catch you next time. So take care.
So long, everyone.